I'm keen, of course, to get to those local election results, but I just want to start off with what's happening in Northern Ireland, because it does feel like quite an astonishing story. Sinn Féin winning that historic victory, sending their First Minister to the Northern Ireland Assembly. What's your reaction?
Well, look, there is clearly some change in Northern Ireland. I think, above all, what we want to see as the UK government is some stability. I think for the people of Northern Ireland, whichever way they voted, we want to see an executive formed, the parties to come together to provide the people of Northern Ireland with that stability. I think it's equally clear that that stability is being put at risk, imperilled, if you like, by the problems with the Northern Ireland Protocol. That's something that affects communities across the board. And it's clear from the dynamic we now see that we won't get to that position of stability until and unless it's fixed. And so we're focused on those two elements, bringing the parties together, stability, but also unlocking the problems with the Northern Ireland Protocol.
Unlocking the problems with the Northern Ireland Protocol. You sound as if this is something that you've got no control over. This Northern Ireland Protocol was what you imposed.
Well, if it had been implemented with the kind of flexibility, goodwill, and with the business interests of communities across Northern Ireland, and it hadn't been used, frankly, as a political device in the way that it has, I don't think we'd have the same level of problems. But the point of discussing that has passed. We must see it now fixed. The government is committed to fixing it, and we won't get the stability that I talked about, the political stability, and that's clear as a result of the outcome of the elections in Northern Ireland.
It's very clear, isn't it? The DUP leader has said that effectively they are not going to, they'll collapse power sharing, they won't form part of the executive until the UK government deals with the protocol. This is what Jeffrey Donaldson said. The protocol is harming our political process, it is undermining political stability. I made clear during this election that the government needs to sort that out, and until they do, I will not be nominating a minister to the executive. I just want to sort of pause and reflect on how serious that is. You know, the executive can't function otherwise. We're in the middle of a cost of living crisis.
Well, there hasn't been an executive for some time, as you know, Sophie. So we want to see an executive up and running. We want to see the parties come together in the kind of cooperation that can make that happen.
So
and
when you look at the protocol in the Queen's speech, I just want to get a bit of a timeline on this. The Queen's speech next week, is the protocol going to be looked at then?
Well, you know that I can't reveal details of the Queen's speech in advance, but what I would say is, first of all, we want to see an executive that can serve the people of Northern Ireland, the bread and butter issues, of which, of course, during the local elections in Northern Ireland, many people have been voting on, as well as other issues. But it's clear the Northern Ireland Protocol must be fixed. The Foreign Secretary's talked about it, the Prime Minister's talked about it, and that cannot be put off. Because we won't get the stability that we want, we won't get the executive that the people of Northern Ireland need until it is dealt with.
So how are you going to deal with it?
Well, look, preferably by negotiation, but if not, we'll have to take the measures to make sure that the economic integrity of the trade between Northern Ireland and the rest of Great Britain, and frankly, the constitutional integrity of the United Kingdom is protected and preserved. And we've talked about that. We set out a series of measures, so this isn't a new conundrum or problem. Brandon Lewis and the Prime Minister set out in a command paper the kinds of things that we would need to see happen. But we will deal with the situation. We will take whatever measures are necessary to protect, as I said, the economic as well as the constitutional integrity of Northern Ireland. But fundamentally, that Northern Ireland Protocol is not working for communities right across the piece in Northern Ireland. And you hear that from businesses and from communities across the political spectrum. So it does need to be fixed. So
you do it unilaterally without the EU if necessary?
Oh, we've been clear that that option has not been taken off the table. We prefer to get it resolved through negotiation. That's why we've been through a protracted period to try and get it fixed through negotiation. But of course, as you know, there are measures that we can take to make sure that we deal with the problem. We can't put it off. And it's clear now, and in fact, if anything, the outcome in Northern Ireland from those elections makes it clear it cannot be put off. And
you say it can't be put off. What kind of time frame are we talking about here?
Well, I don't want to jump the gun because then that will lead all the headlines. I think it needs to be dealt with very responsibly, but we've been talking about...
Are you talking weeks? Are we talking months? What?
No longer than that. It must be dealt with.
No longer than...
Weeks and months. That can span a long period of time. I do not want to escalate some of the tensions that we're seeing. I want to de-escalate them, and that means encouraging the parties to come together. It was interesting to see the results across the board, in particular, for example, the the results of the alliance, which very much campaigned across community divides on bread and butter local issues. I think that's what the people of Northern Ireland want to see focused. But the problem is the stability that allows a Northern Ireland executive to get up and running, allows the elected politicians to serve those communities, can't happen until we unlock and fix the Northern Ireland Protocol.
OK. I want to talk to you a bit about the potential of a border poll as well. Sinn Féin, of course, the largest party, they are obviously would have to enter a power-sharing agreement. But this is what the president of Sinn Féin said, Mary Lou MacDonald, the president of Sinn Féin. She said, "I believe the referendum," and this is on a united Ireland, "I believe the referendum would be possible within a 5-year timeframe. But much more importantly, I believe the preparation needs to start now." What is
well, it's quite a caveated statement, but the point I'd make is that if you look at the results in Northern Ireland, 58% fully of people voted either for parties who support the Union or for parties who do not support constitutional change. And that is the message from the people of Northern Ireland.
But what is the UK government position on a border poll?
Well, look, we don't have an executive yet. I think the first priority, as I said, mindful of that 58% of people in Northern Ireland who are not calling for that kind of change, is to get the executive up and running, get the stability, bring the parties together and make sure we fix the Northern Ireland Protocol. I think, frankly, that is what the people of Northern Ireland will expect right now.
OK. I'm keen to talk about some of the election results elsewhere now, in England, Scotland and Wales. And just to get a bit of a picture of what happened with the Conservative Party. So this is what happened in England. And I'm focusing on the blue column here, the Conservatives. You lost 339 seats in England alone. We can go on to Scotland. In Scotland, you lost 62 seats in Scotland, hard-won seats in Scotland, of course, under Ruth Davidson. And in Wales, you lost 56 seats in Wales as well. This is a pretty disastrous set of results. Well,
look, they're challenging for any government mid-term. We see these kind of...
I'm just going to come in. You say that it's challenging for any government mid-term, right? The Conservatives have been in power for 12 years.
Yeah.
When Gordon Brown was in power, after 12 years in office, he lost 291 councillors, a lot better than you, and also we all know what happens next. I don't think it's fair to just write this off as mid-term results.
No, I'm not. I take it very seriously. I know I was out on the doorstep myself. I know the kind of issues that were raised, and they're, of course, very varied. But all I'd say is, if you look at Keir Starmer's result in these local elections, yes, they've been difficult for us, but he did worse than, for example, Ed Miliband in 2012, no cut-through really beyond London. We have had a mixed bag of results, there's no sugarcoating it, but we've also got areas in the north, from Hartlepool, Barnsley to Bolton, and in the south, whether it's Basildon or Thurrock, where we've done better than expected. So, yes, it's been a difficult set of results, but I think the real story coming out of all of this, and politicians will be going on all the Sunday shows making their pitch.
Picking all the different councils where they've done better.
Exactly. So let me quote two very impartial people, Sir John Curtis and Professor Michael Thrasher, who said respectively that Labour's performance was not making significant progress, and Thrasher said that it was not good enough in making a real dent in a Conservative majority. So the independent experts say that.
I will talk about Labour's performance with our next guest, Lisa Nandy, and I'm keen to talk about the Conservative performance with you, because, as you know, it's not just Labour, it's the Lib Dems who took a lot of seats off you too. And I'm going to quote an impartial observer, if you like. I'll quote the Daily Mail. This is the Daily Mail. This is what would success look like at the local elections for the Conservatives and Labour. And you can see there in the top left corner, more than 350 losses. They're clocking up as a disaster for the Conservatives.
Yes, but look, what people vote in a set of mid-term local elections and what they vote when you choose a government in general election are two wholly different things.
I'm accepting that, but this is what the Daily Mail claim that would be a disaster in these local elections for the Conservatives. What would be the word you would use to describe them?
Mixed bag. Well, a mixed bag, challenging.
Mixed bag? Yeah. Are you a bit complacent here?
Well, no, I'm Sophie, I'm not. I'm pointed to the areas where we've done better than expected. Even in London, which was a very difficult set of results for us, there's areas like the Croydon Mayoralty, there's areas like Harlow, where we've and other areas where actually it has been uneven. I don't think you can take a single view other than to say London under Keir Starmer looks very much a metropolitan party which has got appeal in London but not beyond to the rest of the country. What we're going to be focusing on this week is what our plans are to drive up the economy, protect the cost of living. We're going to be talking about reform in the agricultural sector, innovation to create cheaper, healthier food. We're going to be talking about areas where Britain has a real comparative advantage, tech, financial services.
Does there need to be a bit of a reset, do you think, then, in the Queen's speech?
I don't think it's a reset. Look, clearly, when you have midterm local elections, there's a lot of protest votes out there. There's a message that we must heed, particularly about not focusing on Westminster, but focusing on them. The cost of living problem challenge is going to be there for the next year.
Do you accept you need to do more on the cost of living?
Well, look, we're doing a huge amount, but we've got £22 billion of support that's going in. We've got the extra money that's going to be coming through in July with the national insurance threshold being raised.
Do you accept you need to do more?
We are doing more. That's what I'm saying. In July, the national insurance threshold will be raised. That's extra money in people's pockets. We've got the council tax relief, the energy bills relief. But the point I was making earlier, if you look at the kinds of things we're going to be talking about in the economy in the weeks ahead, from agriculture to financial services and tech, all areas where we've got a great comparative advantage. We're the ones, the Conservative government, with a plan to drive up the job-creating wealth that we need those businesses to create, which also provides the tax revenue that we're funneling in through this £22 billion package to help people who are genuinely finding it hard to make ends meet. Labour, under Keir Starmer, are going to spend the rest of the week talking about the curry menu and the beer that he did or didn't have up in Durham. We're the ones with a plan to address these cost of living challenges.
I want to just have a look at how the Conservatives are doing in the South now.
Sure.
Because obviously, one of the big threats for you is the apparent resurgence of the Lib Dems in the South. Now, this is the Sky News analysis. It's the average change in vote share in the South. It's the top one there. You can see down 5.9% in the South. The Lib Dems, of course, up in the South. And I know you want to talk about Labour, but I'm not interested in talking about Labour at this point. We can talk about Labour with Labour, right? This is about the Lib Dems and the Conservatives in the South. Your seat's in the South.
Yep.
If we had swings like this, you'd lose your seat the next election.
Look, it's going to be a tough fight for me in my seat. Although, actually, I'd just point out, in the council, we still have more seats than the Liberal Democrats on that council. What you're seeing here, and the Lib Dems have often done it, history shows, they're a repository for some protest vote mid-term. And although you don't want to talk about Labour, that's precisely because Labour are doing so poorly in the rest of England outside London. But what people want us to see is get focused on those things that I talked about. And that's why the plans that we're talking about to drive up innovation in the tech, the agricultural sector, in financial services, doesn't just create the well-paid jobs of the future, it creates the tax revenue so that those that are really feeling the pinch, we can provide that extra support. We're the ones with the plan, and that's what we're going to be talking about over the next few weeks.
Focusing on the red wall, you've taken your eye off what's happening in your blue wall, in traditional southern Conservative heartlands like your own?
I've always said it's a balance. You've got to knit an alliance between the aspirational working and middle classes, but that's what we're focused on. And that's why we're the ones, as I said, with the plan for the cost of living, whether it's the universal credit taper.
You've spoken about this.
We have, but we're the ones with the plan. We're going to be talking about that this week, whereas I think you're going to find Keir Starmer wrapped up in Beergate and Durham and the double standards on the Labour Party.
We're
getting off that.
I'm going to ask you about Keir Starmer because I think you do want to talk about it, which is why you've referenced it twice now.
But it's the contrast.
So do you think that Keir Starmer needs to resign now that he's being investigated by the police, which is what he said Boris Johnson, of course, and Rishi Sunak should do?
Well, Sophie, it's the rank double standards that drives people crazy. He needs to fess up and answer all of the holes in the account that he gave of that beer and curry event in Durham. But frankly, I'm not focused on that, and that's why I wanted to draw the contrast. What we're focused on, what this government is focused on, is the measures we're taking on the economy, on tech, on the agricultural sector, our farmers, brilliant innovation to be done there, financial services to drive up the well-paid jobs of the future, but also, and this is where only the Conservatives offer, a plan for a dynamic economy that doesn't just create the jobs, but the tax revenue to support people at this difficult time.
Does Keir Starmer need to consider his position?
I'm not getting into all that because, frankly, I'll tell you the thing I heard on the doorstep loud and clear. They want politicians focused on their issues, not Westminster. But what I would say about it is Keir Starmer looks like, I'm afraid, someone who's engaged in complete hypocrisy, complete double standards. And I don't think he's going to get past that until he gives a proper account of what happened in Durham.
OK, I mean, Labour had said that they have explained what happened in Durham, and they said that they're very, very confident that they, unlike the Prime Minister, they won't be found to have broken the law. But as you say, let's talk about other issues that people are interested about. Now, I spoke to David Simmons, the Conservative MP, earlier this week. He said the number one issue on the doorstep was Partygate and the Prime Minister's conduct. And he spoke about how frustrated he was that the actions of one individual were coming up and that councillors had been lost as a result. And he said that, frankly, he's going to be listening to what the Prime Minister says and working out whether or not he has confidence in his leadership going forward. How worried are you that there will be Conservative MPs thinking, look, hang on a minute, we might be putting in those letters of no confidence?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, look, I respect all of my colleagues, and they make their points. And I also feel for the Conservative candidates that lost their seats or didn't win their seats. I had one who missed out by just 12 votes, which is very frustrating. I feel for all of them. But the reality is, I think, coming through these local elections, there was no cut through for Labour and Keir Starmer. And what we've got to do as a team... Yeah, no, I get it. But what we've got to do as a team, from our councillors to our MPs to our government and with the leadership of the PM, is get focused on those bread and butter issues people care about. And that's why...
Don't you think, though, genuinely...
Sorry, that's why I come back to what we're going to be talking about over the next month. How to drive up the well-paid jobs of the future, but also, critically, if you've got a dynamic economy, to pay for the tax revenue that's going to provide the support for people with the cost of living. That's the crucial issue. We're talking about it. None of the other parties are talking about it.
I just wonder if, people like David Simmons listening to your interview saying that, oh, yeah, these results were a mixed bag, they're going to think the people in Cabinet just don't get it. No, complacent.
Look, I've seen it for myself. We had difficult results in Elmbridge, in the home counties they were. But I also think we need to be sober about this. We need to recognise that midterm elections are difficult and critically, that the Labour Party has had very little cut-through outside London. So there's a job to do, but that job is not engaged in navel-gazing in Westminster. It's about addressing the policy platform of everything we're doing on the economy, on jobs and on the cost of living. And that's what you're going to hear. That's what the government is going to be setting out in the weeks ahead.
Is Boris Johnson still an asset electorally for the Conservative Party?
I'm confident that he can and will win the next election. But that's not something that you just assert. You've got to back it up. And that's why we come back to the measures that we're going to be talking about on the economy, also on the NHS, on social care, but critically, the relief that only the Conservatives with a dynamic economy can provide people who are feeling the pinch of the cost of living. You won't get that with the others.
So Boris Johnson will lead the Conservative Party into the next election then?
Yes.